and welcome. We thank you for joining us today for our Emerging Markets Basics for CPG webinar. I am your host today, Karen Kurzweil, and I welcome you to contact me or Janet after the webinar to request any additional information on our white papers, future webinars, software, and services. Before we get started, I'd like to give you just a few instructions. We have muted all the participants, but it's helpful to ask you to put your line on mute as well, since headphones and other devices can still cause static. Second, we have activated the chat, so please feel free to ask questions. We will wait until the end of the presentation to address those as time permits. Lastly, we will plan to have this presentation available for you on our YouTube channel. Our presenter today is Janet Dorncott. Janet has over 20 years of experience in information technology. In 1996, she founded Relational Solutions and co-owns the company with Rob York. Relational Solutions has developed applications including Blue Sky Integration Studio, POSmart, Blue Sky, and TradeSmart. Janet is a participating author in several shopper technology books. She is a member of Retail Wire's Brain Trust and founder of the Demand Signal Repository Institute on LinkedIn and a recognized leader in the CPG technology. With that, I'll turn it over to Janet.
Thank you, Karen. Today we'll give an overview of emerging markets. We'll discuss the challenges consumer goods companies face in these markets. We'll also cover how these markets are so different. Emerging markets is rated the #1 trend for CPG industry today. So we'll also explore how to understand sales in this space since it's of very high importance for CPG companies. Just a quick background on Relational Solutions and why you would look to us for expertise on emerging market integration. As Karen said, Relational Solutions was started back in 1996 as a data warehouse and business intelligence consulting company. And back in the 90s, companies struggled with analyzing data, and that was because there really wasn't a very good way to integrate it and manage the ongoing changes. So Relational Solutions really became the go-to company for data integration issues, and as a result implemented some of this country's largest scale data warehouses.
Right, Janet. You did Chase Manhattan Bank, Chrysler, Xerox, and all sorts of big companies, correct?
Right. Bell South, Synergy, a whole bunch of them. In fact, we implemented over 200 business intelligence solutions for our customers, and we really started focusing on the consumer goods space back in about 2000. So it's been a long time too, and the reason was because of the added complexity this industry had in integrating syndicated data and POS data with their internal data. Today, they also have the added issues related to integrating data from their website, their mobile purchases, emerging markets, and so forth. So our customer implementations range in size from multi-billion-dollar companies to small companies that utilize all or part of our solutions. And you'll notice that these are not just companies who sell to drugstores. We integrate data from any POS source. So whether your POS comes from grocery, drugstore, mass retailers, specialty stores, convenience stores, even emerging markets, we can integrate that data. We also integrate POS from third parties, obviously, like Nielsen, IRI, Market6, and bunch of others. So let's start with some basics about the emerging market. Emerging markets are developing countries that are moving away from their traditional economies, and they're trying to create a better quality of life for their people. They are trying to industrialize, and they're working to adopt a more free market economy. Emerging markets at one point mainly referred to the countries are Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And these countries are commonly referred to as BRIC. Over the years, as the other countries started to modernize, the discussion on emerging markets started to evolve and started to include other countries. And those countries included Indonesia, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Poland, Turkey, and Mexico. According to the Euromonitor report, between 2014 and 2013, BRIC economies doubled in size, and they collectively now account for 21% of global GDP and 53% of the emerging market GDP.
Wow, that is significant.
You're right, Karen. It's estimated that BRIC countries accounted for $1 out of every $6 spent globally in 2013. BRIC countries also are home to about 268 million households that actually have incomes over $10,000 U.S.
That doesn't sound like much.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't sound like much to us, but it is to them. Significantly higher than it has in the past. And by 2020, BRIC countries are expected to add a combined $3.3 trillion to their consumer spending. Now, keep in mind, this is in 2012 dollars, so it doesn't even account for inflation. But believe it or not, that's actually the same amount of money that both France and Germany combined contribute to the economy today. So just to put it in perspective, in 2013, emerging markets had 85% of the world's population. 90% of those people are under age 30. And I'm going to repeat that because it's very significant. They have 85% of the world's population, and 90% of those people are under the age of 30. That is long-term growth. Their total population is expected to grow at 3 times the rate of developed economies between now and 2020.
Wow.
So, and we also have 10 nations that consist of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. They're commonly referred to as ASEAN.
That's ASEAN, not to be confused with Asian, I take it.
Right. Those countries include not only Indonesia, but also Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, Brunei, Burma, Cambodia, Vietnam, Singapore, and Laos. On top of that, emerging markets are embracing e-commerce. According to Goldman Sachs, online commerce is growing over 27% a year in Asia. And according to McKinsey & Company, 128 million African households will earn $5,000 a year by 2020. Again, it might not sound like much, but it is to them. And this increased income should enable them to spend approximately half their incomes on non-food items. They also claim that the number of African middle-class families earning over $20,000 a year currently outnumber the Indian middle class.
Wow, with that number of households seeing an increase in income, this will have a tremendous impact on the global economy, will it not?
Yeah, it should. The economic growth, population explosion, and increasing incomes in emerging markets have been fueling consumer spending. However, non-BRIC emerging market countries do have lower average incomes, obviously, so currently they are much more cost sensitive. Because of this, CPG companies hoping to get their foot in the door in these markets tend to have to rethink their products, their delivery methods, their cost structures, and much more. In addition, the Euromonitor predicts that the middle class income group in the ASEAN countries will exceed 100 million people by 2020. The ASEAN states have a combined population of over 600 million people. What that means is that 1 in 6 people in ASEAN countries will be considered middle class by 2020. In the past couple years, economies in emerging market countries have shown significant weakness. Political unrest and economic difficulties are widespread, and they are having an impact on income. Plus, the weakened U.S. and European economies are having an effect on these markets. Over the past few decades, emerging markets have contributed to the overall worldwide GDP. However, the recent slowdowns will definitely have a far-reaching impact on countries throughout the world. Volatility of currency is an ongoing issue in emerging markets. CPG companies are trying to report sales, and they need to account for this volatility. They also need a mechanism in their data warehouse or advancing repository to manage currency conversions. This chart, for example, from February shows market performance. This year, Western firms that bet on emerging markets will continue to come under some scrutiny. American firms made a 12% return on equity in 2012, roughly in line with the global average. But having grown fast, profits in these emerging markets are now falling, and there has been recent underperformance in these markets. They are seeing a weakening in demand and a currency drag. That said, most companies are still upbeat about the long term. Consumers from emerging markets are vastly different than those in modern markets. Their needs, their income limitations, the frequent political unrest in their countries. They have transportation limitations that we don't see. They have environmental constraints that we don't have. All these things are much different than the issues we face in modern markets. They have much less disposable income, if any, Even items considered to be staples in the U.S. are often a huge improvement over what they have available. These charts, for example, show how African households spend their money compared to the way Americans spend their money.
Wow, look at healthcare.
Right. For Africans, healthcare accounts for, looks like 30% of their income. Compare that to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics chart on the right that shows healthcare costs in the U.S. accounting for only 7% of our income. African households have less than 2% expendable income. Americans, on the other hand, have 16% when you add the others with entertainment. So despite the relatively low levels of middle-class income in some emerging markets, they do remain a important consumer group. And engaging with these companies with these countries at an early stage is a very smart strategy for building brand awareness and creating and shaping the market for offerings right from the get-go. And as you can see in this chart, most emerging market countries have much less expendable income. We talked about that, but I thought this chart depicted it pretty nicely. Therefore, the bulk of their money is spent on necessities, and that makes them less likely to buy more expensive items, even when that item is significantly better. However, again, that's expected to change as their median income increases. Colgate recognized that expendable income was very low, but they still wanted a footprint in these growing markets. They discovered that Indian villagers, I think this is a pretty cool example really, they discovered they were using things like charcoal, brick dust, and other abrasive substances to clean their teeth. So they went into India introducing their tooth powder to replace and improve what they were currently using, and they introduced it at a low cost. Today they market toothpaste as well as tooth powder in India. And they've built that brand awareness. Colgate's net sales for the first 9 months of 2012 stood at $2.3 billion, up more than 2% over the previous year. According to Forbes, this growth was largely driven by a 6.5% increase in organic sales. Emerging markets in Latin America and Asia Pacific consisted of a large portion of that organic growth. On the other hand, growth in emerging market economies is also exposing Colgate to higher selling costs. So last quarter, the company's net sales fell by about 1%, despite a 5% increase in volume. And that was due partly to unfavorable exchange rates since the U.S. dollar got stronger. They said that was actually the main reason that they had a net negative 5% impact on sales growth. But according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the estimated average American grocery bill for a family of 4 with 2 teenagers ranges from $700 to $1,400 per month. So another challenge facing CPG companies is selling their products in emerging markets. The transaction amounts in those markets tend to be significantly lower than what they're used to seeing in the U.S. And currently global markets are shaky, and many experts are blaming that on the emerging market. Their weakness over the past 6 months has been widespread. They have had a decade of high performance, but with anything, slowdowns inevitably happen. Recently, Nivea skin cream maker Beiersdorf reported lower than expected quarterly results. So they determined they would plan to be a little more cautious in the next year while emerging markets are stuttering. They had previously seen growing demand and increased brand awareness in Asia, Eastern Europe, and Latin America. The CEO of Beiersdorf, Stefan Heydrich, recently said markets are cooling down dramatically, and he was talking about mainly China, Thailand, and Vietnam. So is this integrating point-of-sale POS wasn't complicated enough for CPG manufacturers? The new dilemma related to understanding sales now includes integrating emerging market data.
Well, what makes this a new dilemma?
Well, first of all, if you're even getting data, it's coming from very immature countries. I mean, countries like Nigeria and Bangladesh and Thailand and Laos, those are the type of countries that are sending data.
What makes the emerging market data so much different from the POS data you get in the United States or Europe?
Well, a lot really. I mean, frequency varies greatly, meaning how frequently you get it. Formats, meaning the way you're getting that data. The data types are very different. The users are less sophisticated. The retailer sizes are different. I actually have an example of that. The products being sold are different. Shipping procedures and costs are high. The needs of the consumer are different. Currency is volatile, and a whole lot of other things make it just significantly different. Just about every aspect of the sales process is different in emerging markets. Just very, very completely different dynamics out there. Let's start with the fact that they have a completely different sales model. Let's go big and kind of compare the emerging markets with Walmart in the United States. To most CPG companies, Walmart represents their highest percentage of sales, and they are in emerging markets. But let's just look at Walmart U.S. So if you're a CPG executive in the U.S., the very highest level of a report you would look at would be overall corporate sales. Then the next highest level would likely be cross-retailer sales, showing your sales across the different retailers. The next highest level would be likely showing, consumer or category managers, for example, the way they could drill down into that. So say, for example, you are a Walmart executive, you can see cross-retailer sales. You might be a category captain for Walmart. You might want to drill from Walmart U.S. down to region, down to sales rep, right down to the store. You might drill down by category and go, for example, category to brand to sub-brand to item, and even down to the SKU. But Walmart, bottom line is, Walmart owns all those stores. They own over 4,200 stores in the U.S. and 6,000 stores across the world. Altogether, they operate over 11,000 retail units under 71 different banners in 27 countries. They also employ 2.2 million people around the world and 1.3 million in the U.S. alone. So let's compare that now with the emerging markets. This is an example of where you would see an executive potentially looking at some cross-retailer sales for their highest level retailers. But if you compare that with the emerging markets, unlike the U.S. and Europe, their retailers tend to be individuals who own individual stores. They rarely even own more than one store. At the retail level, what we would normally consider to be the very highest level of analysis in the U.S. is not the case for emerging markets. The emerging markets, one owner would be the only one looking at one store. It's a very different paradigm. Most retailers like Target, Tesco, Ahold, and so forth all own hundreds or even thousands of stores. And that's not to say that the independent shop owner in the U.S. and Europe don't exist. They definitely do. But those independent shop owners would typically fall into the all others category on a chart showing cross-retailer sales. The bulk of sales for a CPG manufacturer are through large chain retailers in modern markets. Now let's look at the POS itself. Most emerging market retailers don't even have cash registers. They're uploading sales information potentially to corporate on a night. They're not uploading sales information to their corporate on a nightly basis, I should say. Most don't, are just managing their own inventory. The owner himself, in most cases, is manually counting the items on the shelf, then placing orders. Items are not normally being ordered through any sophisticated systems. Usually the proprietor is using an application on their cell phone to place an order back to the distributor. The distributor is often then transmitting or forwarding that order back to the manufacturer. Therefore, in most cases, POS data from emerging markets isn't even POS data. It tends to be order data or sometimes shipment data. Getting end store information from distributors to integrate with internal data is often even a problem for U.S.-based companies. Another common issue for CPG manufacturers are the vast array of data types. Although many retail owners in the emerging markets are very savvy with their cell phones, the applications aren't always the same.
That's a problem everywhere, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Even with U.S.-based retailers. Depending on the data source, it can be coming in a variety of formats. EDI data, AS2, flat files, the same issues. Even the EDI data that's supposed to have rules around it and be so consistent isn't consistent. However, the data cleanliness issues with emerging market retailers are not only greater with emerging markets because they are so different, but they're also much more unknown and untested. So we also need to consider mobile payments. Having looked at the landscape and its drivers, it's clear that the future of electronic payments in emerging markets is pretty good. Unfortunately, emerging markets can also be complicated and unpredictable. So governments in emerging markets have realized that accommodating electronic payments could accelerate the economic growth in their countries. So although regulators have been actively involved in making this happen, they are concerned and they want to make sure that they've implemented measures to manage security and fraud on these networks. So regulators have been learning more, leaning more towards security than toward convenience. So for an emerging market to thrive, it needs regulators that can balance both that growth and security. Since electronic payments are mature in other countries, regulators know what challenges to look for, such as data theft or credit risk. And different countries with different regulators have their own set of challenges, which is why regulators need to plan requirements carefully and collaborate with commercial as well as financial sectors to make sure they do it right. But there's also the currency and the volatility of currency. Since 2011, emerging market stocks have been significantly underperforming with more traditional U.S. and European markets. In the past 3 years, the ETF that tracks emerging markets has underperformed the S&P by more than 40%. So all of these economic issues and currency issues are all making it more complicated for CPG companies to keep track of their emerging market sales. So how do you understand those sales? Well, it's the same age-old dilemma we've seen happen year over year in the business intelligence space. Today, emerging market data is the new data source. This slide depicts the data dilemma that consumer goods companies face. The data's there. You get it in most cases. You might even have the impression you're getting too much data. But that's not the case. In my opinion, you can never have too much data. The issue is having that data in a usable and reliable format so you can leverage that data and know more about your business. The data comes in from so many different sources that it's truly impossible for most companies to get all the value out of it. Most companies are using it just to produce the reports they need. They just don't even have the time or the bandwidth to create new insights, even though the data is there. Analysts spend countless hours gathering and pulling together data. Emerging market data is even worse, again, because of the uniqueness associated with each country. But if you have the right architecture in place, this data can definitely be leveraged. So what the POSmart architecture does is we streamline the cleansing and integration of all these various sources, and we put them into a common repository where the data is now clean, reliable, easy to access. Our data model manages hierarchies and aligns data for reporting based on your internal calendars as well as retailer calendars. We can leverage our open architecture to integrate emerging market data from Russia, Brazil, China, India, so forth. We customize the data model depending on your company's requirements. Now, there is no plug-and-play solution for all the different ways you may want to look at data. So we have to customize it for each customer based on how they want to see the data. However, we do have a data integration engine that does integrate data based on data types. So that's standardized. It also makes the long-term management of it much, much easier. So whether or not you're getting emerging market data through an FTP site, in a CSV file, as a text file, through EDI, AS2, or from some third party, we can integrate it. We put that data into an easy-to-use format that's easy and quick to access. We can also automate report delivery and still follow on with giving you the ability to do ad hoc querying for your power users. The result is a better understanding of your overall sales, including emerging markets. Far more employee productivity is gained by leveraging this architecture, and you'll have much more productive meetings. On top of that, you'll have more access to reliable information than you ever had access to in the past. This data will help you know more about your business, provide more value to your management, help you understand your customers better, and provide more insights to generate more profits. And again, since this is the #1 area, emerging market that companies are growing in, and the #1 trend, this is something that needs to be done. Our smart solution architecture is an open architecture. The database is independent, and it can reside on virtually any data source. We also have our hosted model in our data center here for those companies that prefer a hosted solution. But it resides on, Oracle, Teradata, DB2, whatever you prefer. If you can imagine, and actually in some cases we make recommendations based on the data volume, but if you can imagine everything on the left side of this line as things that exist in most large CPG companies, sources that exist, this is just a sample of data sources. The different retailers, of course, the modern retailers, the third-party data, but you get the concept. On a nightly basis, our Blue Sky Integration Studio looks for new data. Any new data is then brought into our staging area that's where all the work is done. We're cross-referencing retailer data with your internal data. we're mapping the data. We're applying business rules based on the way you guys want to see your data, based on the alerts that you want to see, based on the amount of the data volumes that may or may not be coming through, based on certain issues we know could happen. We then align your internal data with the external data and load that data into the POSmart data model, which is designed for easy querying, easy access to the data. On top of that, we automate the scheduling of reports so that those reports, once that data is loaded, those reports are then cached on the server, and when your users come in the morning, all the reports are ready and waiting for them. Again, increasing employee productivity is the goal here. In addition, analysts are able to create new reports and have faster access to information. So today I wanted to give you some insight into the emerging markets, but I also wanted you to know that we do have solutions to help you manage that and to make sense of it if you're interested. And if you are interested in a full demo of the Smart Solution, we're happy to coordinate that with you. We'll be able to coordinate that with, through Karen. But basically, the Smart Solution architecture allows us not only add POS data, but for trade groups, we're integrating promotional data, cost of goods sold, we're integrating plan data, deals, forecasts, all sorts of information relevant to those groups. We're also integrating shipments for supply chain people. We're integrating forecasts to help streamline that. We're integrating the syndicated data. These are just a few examples, but the bottom line is our architecture is sound, it's time-tested, and it is the way to go to help you integrate these new data sources, which will continue to evolve over time. So it's important to have a solution in place that will grow with your business. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back to Karen.
Thanks, Janet, and thank you everyone for your time here today. We are up against our 30-minute time frame. So if you're interested in more information on our POS solutions, please contact me. I'm at extension 232, and we can schedule a demo specific for your company. In addition, look for our next webinar as well as other informational webinars on our website. You can download our white papers, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or simply give us a call. Thank you again for joining us today for this informational webinar. We hope you found that helpful. Please send us your comments on how you liked the webinar and how we can improve upon it. And we will follow up with the questions that were submitted and supply the related answers. We thank you again and have a great day.